Okay, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
With regard to the fact that you just said that there would not be any further taxation as part of the recovery plan, what effort is going to be made to completing the revised basket of goods under the new VAT plan of 17.5%? This had originally been implied by former Senator Ainsley Benn, but it is yet to realization.
Well, in relation to that, and I do remember the proposal from Senator Benn, but we have to remember very clearly, and one of the things that we face, in fact, this is one of the issues that we face in relation to what they call tax expenditures. These are expenditures or concessions and waivers which are given on top of a tax that is applied. In fact, I think you would recall very clearly in a speech delivered by the Right Honourable Owen Arthur, I believe it, I don't recall the country, he said one of the mistakes that he made in relation to the VAT was giving too many waivers and zero ratings to the VAT, and that if he had to do it over again, that he would eliminate some of those. I think that makes the point quite eloquently, in the sense that every time you do an adjustment in relation to zero rating or exempting from payment of any tax, it is a cost, because as you either collect it and give it back or you don't collect it at all, then it presents a challenge. We believe that the current exemptions are adequate in relation to the basket of goods. There may be some adjustments that you could make in terms of taking out some items and replacing them with other items, particularly more healthy items, which will address the issue that Barbadians have with health issues and chronic non-communicable diseases. But in terms of a blanket expansion of that basket at this time, that is not a contemplation of the government.
Minister, I'm getting a sense from what you were saying earlier that the government is still pressing ahead with the layoffs as was announced earlier. Is that figure negotiable in any way?
Well, as I said in my presentation, any figure is negotiable. We are consulting with our colleagues, the labor representatives, on these matters. They have made presentation, but at least one of them has made a presentation officially of what they call a 10-point plan of alternatives. We are considering those, and we are meeting with them tomorrow evening. In fact, I'm meeting with them tomorrow evening, and the Minister of Labour as well. And we will respond to them officially. But the government's policy is the government's policy. We've put that policy on the table. We are preparing that policy, as I said, even in the face of continuing negotiations. And if credible alternatives come up that could either prevent that from happening or reduce the numbers, then it is incumbent on us in good policy making to consider those and to take them on board. But that will depend on what comes out of there. But as far as we're concerned, we're continuing with our
Just
policy.
a follow-up question to that one then. So once the layoffs go ahead, are you giving any thought to extending beyond 6 months the unemployment that people will get once they're laid off?
Not at this stage. We did do some of that earlier in the economic challenges which we face. As you know, we extended it from, I believe, 26 weeks to 40 weeks or something of that nature. And we would have to look at it because, of course, the unemployment fund at the National Insurance doesn't have a never-ending stream of resources. So you would have to consider the impact of it to see how that would affect the fund and its viability. And we do know that the fund has had some challenges over the years.
Minister, let me clarify whether the figure is indeed 3,000 in terms of the people who will be laid off, because we've had...
Yes, it is 3,000. I said, I don't know what other quarters, David. I delivered a ministerial statement which was approved by the Cabinet of Barbados, and it said specifically 3,000 persons in the straight cut, and then we will implement over time and a policy of attrition through retirements, which normally happen in the public service. So as people retire, unless the post is absolutely critical and fundamental to the functioning of a critical aspect of government's operations, those posts will not be filled. And therefore, we expect that over the adjustment period that we could get another 500, which would bring at the end of the adjustment period a total of 3,500. But in terms of the actual layoffs, if you're asking about layoffs, that figure is 3,000.
Minister, you must have been hearing a lot of concern about the issue of efficiency. The unions are talking about personnel lapsed out and that sort of thing. But
yes.
Ultimately, because of the state of the economy, people are looking to see ultimately what is going to be done to make the civil service even more efficient. You've had a number of recommendations coming from the International Monetary Fund too,
yes,
in relation to this matter. And to those people who say that it appears as though all you get is promises and talk about what is to happen, can you give us anything more concrete today?
I just told you
what you are actually doing right now in this regard.
I saw you looking at your watch when I was reading, and clearly you were a little distracted, David. I said very clearly what the position was. We are undertaking a major reform of the public sector, particularly in relation to statutory entities, where a lot of the major expenditure goes in subsidies and transfers. We are looking, and we've said this, and the final report, of course this work is being conducted under the direction of the Director of Finance, who's here, a report to look at 19 institutions. I just read that. And we expect, after consultation with the workers' representatives and the private sector as well, that commencement of the implementation of those recommendations will start from April this year. It will mean that of those 19 institutions, some will go out of business, others will merge with each other, and perhaps, where it is feasible and makes sense for private involvement in the operations of any of those institutions, that will be undertaken as well. But I don't want to prejudge the work of the committee that's been put together. I know they've been meeting with the institutions themselves. They've been meeting with civil service, Ministry of Finance, and so forth and so on. That report is due this week, maybe latest next week. And by the end of January, certainly Cabinet should have approved that work.
Is the independent oversight mechanism that the IMF referred to when they said also that it would be critical to address weaknesses in the oversight and operations of the statutory bodies whose financial performance in many instances is not available?
No, that's not. That's a separate thing. As you would recall in the ministerial statement which I delivered, I indicated, even before the IMF thing came out, that I believe it was in October this year, we had written, it's October? Yeah, in the statement. But prior to that, in the budgetary proposals, I indicated that we would be writing to the International Monetary Fund, and I believe we firmed up that somewhere around October, where we wrote to them, this is before the Article 4 consultations, and asked their Fiscal Affairs Department to give us technical assistance through CARTAC, which is the regional technical advisory body that the IMF is part of, with our governments, to provide a team to monitor and evaluate selected statutory entities as to not only their financial performance, also management reviews in terms of their accounting procedures and principles, and to assist us to better have a mechanism for consistent reporting of financial situations as they relate to the operations of these institutions. Some of these institutions, if you may ask, Transport Board, National Housing Corporation, the General Hospital, and I think those three in particular for sure are three of the ones that we will be looking at. There are others that may be added, but those ones that get large transfers from government. Now, this is not anything new, David. This is not new. this situation has been developing for many, many, many years, where statutory corporations in Barbados, as you know, deliver very late their financial reports. Some of them have reports outstanding for many years. If I may make the point, I don't like to make these points, but sometimes it is useful to make them. For example, we even had a situation when we came into office to discover that the financial reports, the audited reports for the National Insurance Scheme were 3 or 4 years behind. And we had to employ on a special account an accounting firm or set of accounting firms to bring those to account. We're happy to report today that that has been done, and those reports should be out very, very shortly as approved by the Accountant General of Barbados. We know this has been going on in statutory entities for a number of years, but nobody has taken the time to do this type of monitoring and corrective action. And I'm saying that until we do so, and unless we do it, we are not going to get the kinds of financial probity, the types of efficiency, the type of reporting that is desired in this economy to correct the situation of, as you say, inefficiency and wastage, and of course a burden as it is on the public purse. I'm saying that somebody has to take this bull by the horn, and we in the Ministry of Finance, under my leadership, are going to do it to ensure that Barbadians are much better for it.
So, Mr. Sinckler, going back to that 10-point plan for the National Union of Public Workers, they have accused government of not bargaining with them in good faith, and it is stemming from comments that, I'm quoting the President Maloney here, what bothers this organization is that since we sent our proposals to the Ministry of Civil Service, we've heard in the press from ministers and from the Minister of Finance stating that our proposals have not gone far enough, or in some cases, some persons are outright dismissing them. Has described it as an affront to the industrial relations process in the country. You're saying that you've had the discussions and you're having negotiations with these organizations, and they're saying, in essence, that they feel as though a decision has already been made in terms of job losses, job cuts, I should say. Has a decision, a definitive decision been made that we are going to be getting rid of 3,000 jobs in the civil service without the need for discussion?
Let me intervene, because before you go too far down the wicket and get stuck. I know Mr. Maloney very well. He's a colleague, and of course he's known for colorful language. I delivered a ministerial statement that is government policy in the Parliament of Barbados, and it said what it said. We engaged the unions before that statement. Well, the C2SAB, I should say, and NUPW included in that number. We, of course, wanted to do Barbados Workers Union, but they couldn't come at the time. They were engaged in other matters, including a dispute with the Barbados Water Authority, but we subsequently did them before the statement was delivered, and we have met with them 3 times over the period. The process we have outlined, and we said when it would start and how it would go about, is government policy. And I didn't dismiss their proposals. Their proposals came, I believe, a week ago, officially. In fact, I first read of some of the proposals in the newspaper and heard it on the radio before it was presented to the government. They had a press conference to speak to the public. I don't know about any other ministers who have spoken. I don't normally read things that I don't really, read papers too much, so I don't see a lot of that. But what I do know is what I said. And I was asked a question. I believe it was by Ricky Jordan of the Nation newspaper. I said, at glance from what I saw in the paper, it didn't look as though it went far enough in terms as an alternative to what we were proposing and the savings we were looking to get. I said, however, I would have to see the full thing and get a full analysis, which we are doing right now and should be completed today, so that when we meet with them tomorrow, we will be able to say to them why we believe or if we believe, if that's the conclusion, why the measures that they have proposed do not go as far as we may want them to go in the circumstances. So it is not bad faith. We're not negotiating in bad faith. It's really the timing, when they delivered it, when we got it, the analysis that is being done. But the government has put its position on the table. We have announced it to the country, what our course of action is. Now, of course, nobody wants to, people seem to think that there's some rejoicing that somebody has brought out party hats and noisemakers and are rejoicing in the corridors of government headquarters because people have to go home. That is not true. This is a very painful decision for the government. It certainly is a very painful decision for me, because there are probably members of my family working in the government, most likely, more likely than not, who may very well be among the 3,000 if it comes to pass. So it is not something that we are rejoicing about. And we held on to public sector jobs against much criticism, against much abuse in Barbados. And I smile when I hear people talking. One of the things that amaze me, some of the people who are now crying crocodile tears for the people in the NEEP program were the hate people who were saying week in, week out that the first set of people you should send home is the people working in the NEEP program. Let me explain to you how the NEEP program came about, because the Democratic Labour Party get blamed for a lot of this. The NEEP program did not start as any crash program for work, for people to find political jobs, as was said. That was a welfare to work program. We actually went into the welfare department. It was started on the Dennis Law, the Honorable Dennis Law, when he was Minister of Social Care. I became Minister of Social Care after. We selected the people off the welfare roll with the intent of giving them a 2 or 3 day or 4 day job in government, to wean them off the public welfare system, to build their confidence, to give them an opportunity to participate in the mainstream of the economy. And we were slaughtered up and down Barbados for doing it. That is how that program started. It is unfortunate that the financial situation does not allow us, and we made it clear. In fact, for those who have been around long enough, and you stretch your memory, you will remember that a big meeting was held at the Lloyd Erskine Sandifer Center, where those workers were brought in, and they were addressed by the Prime Minister and the ministers connected, MTW and Social Care. And they were told why the program was being done. And it had an outstanding rate of success, where over the first period, from 2008, I believe, to 2012, only one person dropped out. And that was because of illness. That is why that program was done. And we did that to give dignity to people in Barbados. So when people are talking about, and I make the point that it was always known by the majority of those workers, if not all of them, that this was contract work. This is work that was not permanent, built into government, but it was a program to help people transition from welfare to work. So when we were being slaughtered about this, as we were slaughtered, and we have been slaughtered for a number of programs in this country, but people simply do not understand. You see that program about bus fares for school children? There are a lot of people in Barbados who, even though you tell them, still pretend they don't understand. But that had nothing to do with any political gimmick. That had to do with saving a class of young people in this country who were under fundamental threat from forces out to do evil rather than good. I can't say specifically because I am sworn to secrecy when I was a member as Minister of Foreign Affairs of the National Security Council. But I can tell you that if we did not intervene in that particular way, the public of Barbados would have seen some things in Barbados. People who know, but the vast majority of people don't know what was going on in bus stands in Barbados, and how people's children are being ferried in and out of this country for prostitution and drugs. So when people talk about these programs, let me tell you something. Just sit down and no willy-nilly thing and we doing this to get votes. That is not how that program started, and it's not how the NEAT program started. And I'm saying a government that has a heart, made up of people who have heart, and who are interested in the development of their own country and development of the people in their country, will take decisions to protect those people. Sometimes those decisions most times those decisions have costs. Yes, and sometimes we have to pay for it. Sometimes we have to make adjustments to bring them to end, or to shift them or reformulate them, find ways in which we can take the burden off the state. But at the juncture where you are dealing with policy, at the juncture, and you have to make those decisions, you make them because it is in the best interest of everybody in the country.
Mr. Minister, how has government gone about determining who among the 3,000 or people who are going to make up 3,000
Yes.
should be laid off, given the fact that you might end up in a situation where the sole breadwinner of the family might be out of the job as a result of divorce?
Yes, we've identified, and that's a very good point, Joel. And it's nice to see you again. That's a very good point. We have determined that a process has to be put in place, and that's why we said a process and mechanisms and leadership. I will leave it to the Minister of Civil Service, who of course is the Right Honourable Prime Minister, to deal with that, to deal with the announcements on those particular matters. We have said that if we proceed, or when we proceed, that we will adopt the 1991 principles in relation to the overall retrenchments, salary packages, and so forth and so on. Of course, those would have to be amended according to what has developed as industrial relations practice over the last 20 years or so additional. And we've also indicated to the various ministries working on this, finance, civil service, of course, the Chief Personnel Officer's Office, and the Ministry of Labour, that appropriate arrangements be put in place for those people to have counselling, because it could be a very strenuous and difficult circumstance. And not only psychological counselling, but financial counselling, because there may be some people who will receive separation packages that are quite generous, and you don't want a situation where they go and and as we were saying, knock out the money and then have difficulties getting a job in the near future. So we will have all of that in place, and we have also issued an edict to ensure that where departments have to release workers, that they do a clear analysis of all the persons involved to ensure that situation that you described does not develop, where two breadwinners in the same household get sent home, or somebody who is clearly in a debilitated position be the person to suffer first in that particular regard. So those safeguards are being put in place, but the Prime Minister will make the specific announcements in relation to that.
Mr. Minister, you have a number of issues outstanding which have implications for the economy.
Yes.
Seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Once the people are back, and debt to Barack. What's the
Okay. Which one you want me to take first, Kaliko? The cabinet is shortly to approve, and whether the cabinet paper has been completed and submitted to approve the formal and final restructuring plan for CLICO. We expect thereafter the judicial managers will shortly, I don't know what time frame, but in a couple of weeks or so, will return to the court and indicate to the court that the government has thrown its full support behind the restructuring plan, which was identified when they last went to the court and had tentative approval for it. We are going to go ahead and implement the Barbados portion of it. We are still waiting on our OECS partners to make a decision whether they're going to participate or not and at what level. But we feel people have been waiting long enough, and we've taken the decision that we're going to move ahead with that restructuring plan. Basically, that plan says that we create a new company, what they call a new co. We put the insurance business sanitized as it is into that new company. That the government would create. They would create two property trusts, one in the OECS and one in Barbados. But for Barbados' purposes, one here, in which the assets will be placed. Those property trusts will then, of course, we will then issue bonds against the value of the assets. Of course, you know there's a deficit between what is owed as liability and what is the asset value. I believe about $400 million, but they're going to do a current valuation to see what's the difference. Once that is done, we will invite those persons who have EFPAs to take a traditional annuity structured appropriately to suit their investment. Those persons who are corporate, and that's with the individuals, those persons who are corporate, from my memory, will be given interest in the new companies. And in the asset companies, and from there we expect that that the orderly restructuring of that entity should be well on its way. In relation to the other one, Four Seasons. In relation to Four Seasons, we have, the cabinet has made a tentative selection on the new preferred investors, but we have broadened the scope to invite. There were two shortlisted. The other one to do a counter proposal. Basically, cabinet has asked for both to revise their proposal and come back. We expect that should be done this week. They should report to us next week. Cabinet will make a final decision. And then in that regard, we will engage in the process of a handover of that project back to the private sector.
Minister,
Al-Barak. The Al-Barak matter is still receiving the attention of the government. There is a proposal for an investor to purchase the property, for that investor to then lease it back to government. We believe that proposal went to the court. The court accepted it, but asked for additional things to be done. Those things are currently being done. We are negotiating the proposal to see the terms and conditions for the sale and lease back. It came to the Ministry of Finance. It came to me, in fact, and we did not support the terms. We felt the terms were far too generous to the person who was investing. We've asked for a renegotiation of those terms, and once that is done, then hopefully we will be able to take a decision and get that particular saga behind us.
So, Minister, your confidence notwithstanding,
yes,
a couple of issues here that I want you to address in the public interest. One is that you would have heard your political opponents make the charge.
Yes.
That all of this we could well be doing in vain because, according to them, you have an $800 million gap to fill. And what you are proposing to do, the cuts, fall far short of that. And to that extent, it's like suggesting that we are spinning top in mud and we are not necessarily going to be able to pull out of this in the kind of way that we are. It's like, given the fact that over the past couple of years, we've had so many of these statements coming from you and from the government, but from you in particular, and we seem to have a downward spiral nonetheless. And the other thing I'm interested in here is this special project, the adopting of sections of major highways. Exactly how is that proposed to work?
I will have to direct you to the private sector people who are doing it. What government has done is to facilitate it to happen. I believe the proposal which they have includes some planning permissions, and it's before the town planner for a decision. But basically what I have described is what was presented to the government, and that is as much details as I can go into it. It is about for private sector companies to adopt at their cost and fund, to raise the capital and fund the maintenance as they do with roundabouts, for example. Each will take a small section of the highway and be responsible for maintaining that. I assume they will pool the resources together and select the companies, and those companies will of course carry out the maintenance work. That is as much as I can say to you on it at this stage. But afterwards, if need be, I can direct you to the principles of it.
The overall gap that we're talking about.
Okay, you mean the fiscal deficit. Look, we always said, David, that the issue of dealing with the fiscal deficit could not, because of its size, could not be done overnight in one fell swoop. We had, because of the stability of the economy and maintaining that balance, we had to bring that down gradually. What the measures that we have announced, the additional measures that we have announced, is to accelerate that slightly or to deepen that process slightly because of the situation pertaining to a fall off in our revenues, particularly for the first 6 months of the current financial year. And expenditure has not grown, it's not expanded in that way massively, but we have had that reduction in expenditures. Now, you have to understand something, David, and I listen to, sometimes when I'm in my car, the calling programs, and I hear a lot of statements being made. But I want to make it very clear, because you said you've heard a lot of statements from me. When I became Minister of Finance in 2010, late 2010, I might add, I believe in October, late September or early October.
September.
Right, September, October, when I became Minister of Finance. The previous year, the deficit was 9.1%. The economy declined by 4.7%. I introduced measures, I believe, October, November, in relation to dealing with that fiscal deficit. We had just brought out our medium-term fiscal strategy, the first one to deal with those matters. The following year, we reduced the deficit from 9.1% to 4.7% of GDP. We had economic growth, a decline in economic growth in 2009-10 of 4.7%. The year after I became Minister of Finance and we had a full implementation of policy, the economy grew by 0.5%. We went into 2012. In fact, that's the year that VAT outperformed all expectations. The VAT performance behind the increase to 17.5 was frankly spectacular. We went into 2012, and when we hit the middle of 2012, the world economy started to buckle again. Britain went into a double-dip recession. The United States started to flounder. Europe collapsed. Tourists weren't coming here. And don't let anybody fool you, David. This economy is driven by the foreign exchange earning sectors. When those sectors are down, structurally and significantly, it affects everything that goes on here. When we earn foreign exchange and it is redeemed at the central bank, you get Barbados dollars. Those dollars go into the system. Those are what generate the activity in construction, in retail and wholesale. That is what drives it. So no, you let me finish. You see, because you have a whole program every Monday to lash me. I only have this opportunity to respond to you humbly. So let me talk a little bit. Good. Yeah.
Meditation to come.
No. So these are the facts. These are the facts. And we had that situation. It then dragged into 2012. And we said from April, when we began to see this decline in the foreign reserves, up until that point, we had maintained in the worst global recession, the hardest hit for tourism, hardest hit for international business, we had maintained our foreign reserves at an average of $1.4 billion, or 16 to 17 weeks of imports, right up to April. Now, when people say that we try to mislead people in the election, that the economy was stable, and because I know that's what you all say, the economy was stable, and then all of a sudden, we maintained it, and the stability that we were talking about in the economy was in relation to the foreign reserves. We said that and we maintained that. Well, come April, 6 weeks after the general election, money started to disappear. People calling on the central bank, but the money is not coming in. And we immediately activated the economic response mechanism. We had a national consultation. We had meetings all over the place. We met with unions, private sector, everybody. We said what the facts were. I heard somebody on your program sitting right next to you saying that in 1991, we knew why the Sandyford had to take the measures. Now, Saloy, Erskine Sandyford had to take the measures. We knew we had a balance of payments problem, but we don't know. We haven't heard why the measures have to be taken now. Absolutely untrue. We said then, as I said in December, I have not hidden anything from the public of Barbados. It is laid out in my ministerial statement. It is there for all to see. We said what the facts were and what we were trying to do to address the situation.
Minister, what is the difference between our 18-month program and any IMF 18-month program? What is it? Why, in other words, why is it that we have decided that we would go along this particular trajectory without any financing to support it? What would they have been asking of us that we don't have in our 19-month program?
The IMF came here. And I really must say, having gone through a few of these Article 4 consultations, this one was very refreshing. Because they didn't come here to browbeat us and to direct us here, the PS. They didn't come here to talk down to us or walk in with a devaluation in a briefcase and say, y'all got to do this. They came in this room as they went across the country, meeting with agencies, and they sat down with us. They came here and they sat down and said, look, we are looking at the situation, we are collecting data. Yes, we need more information and stuff, but we think that the program you are implementing is appropriate to the circumstances. Yes, we may do it slightly different if we had to do it in an IMF program, but we think it is of sufficient magnitude and appropriateness to the circumstances. The question that they raised was whether as a country, the public, including people in the media, would try to support the program rather than try to tear it down. And I had to tell them what I don't know. I could only present it to the public and try my best, my level best to get the support, and that is what we are doing. And so therefore, this issue, people running around, and that's the thing that really is amazing, David. People running around saying, oh, the Barbados dollar can devalue. We have a rumor a minute society. Everything. Oh, Sinckler resigned. I think he called a press conference this evening. Oh, the dollar is going to devalue next week. Oh, and the country's running the foreign exchange. Oh, they ain't got no more oil imports. All of that rubbish to just browbeat, to bring down the psyche of Barbadians. That everything. I listened to your program in parts today. I heard a woman say some things there. I know you cut her. But she
thought she was talking with you?
She mashed the grease a little bit, but that ain't a problem. I don't get involved in that. But I am not the run to the court type. Even though somebody is going to have to answer for something they wrote yesterday. But anyway, the point of the matter is I heard people call in, the Prime Minister's be half asleep most of the month, and Chris Sinckler, he said one thing today, and he said something, and you went, and you got, and all of that rubbish. Just say, things in Barbados are so bad, we are the worst off. Look, in 1991, we went down to 2 weeks of imports. 2 weeks. We are at 15. We went down to 2 weeks, even at our worst, without the foreign loan, which we just locked in. Which, of course, the opposition, everybody said we can borrow. But now when we borrow it, they say, they get it, but they get it at terms I don't like. Why should the government have to produce the Article 4 consultation report? But the Article 4 consultation report is put up on the website of the IMF. Anybody can take it down. So if a bank want the consultation report put in as one of the conditions, well, why would I object to that? And so they say we can borrow, but we borrow it. We got it. But we went down to 2 weeks of imports. Unemployment went as high as 23%. We laid off 3,000 people, cut salaries by 8%, reduced unemployment benefits, and eliminate all of the tax deductions, bar a few out of the tax code. This government has not done this. In fact, as I said in my presentation, with the exception of the mini recession we had in 2001 after 9/11, all the other recessions that we've had in this country have been worse than this. The 1971, 72, 73 period, the oil crisis, 81, 82, when the great Tom Adams, that Mr. Ellis liked so much, used to have all those battles with, and I used to enjoy them. He laid off people, went to the IMF, did all of those things too. Mr. Sandyford in 91 had a worse domestic recession to deal with. We have had the worst international recession in 100 years. And you want to tell me you can't give any value at all to the capacity of the government to have maintained this economy and keep it afloat in the worst possible recession that the world has ever seen, in which values were cut, investment was cut, tourists were cut, spending was cut, international business, which David and colleagues is responsible for 60% of tax revenues in terms of corporate profits. So when you get that sector being hammered in a global recession, when you get tourism being hammered in a global recession, and you were to tell me with all of the debt that we've had to be pulled on and debt and had to come in and deal with, you all don't talk about these things, Oh, yeah, you get the microphone, because we can have an engagement on that issue.
The only point, though,
I know you want to stop me.
Discussion. The government spending has also been heavily criticized against the backdrop of knowing all that was happening. Prior to the elections, we saw a situation where there were persistent criticisms about how the government was spending. And
yes.
You, as Minister of Finance, must take the responsibility for having not reined it in.
David, I take responsibility. I don't run from responsibility, but you have to understand that we were. Everybody was hoping, and these are all the international experts, that the turnaround in the global economy would have been strong enough to have helped our revenues to rise to the level where we can make the expenditure adjustments without having to retrench people. That was the policy. And there wasn't any explosion of expenditure. If you look at what we were spending in terms of goods and services and so forth, in 2012, in 2011 as opposed to 2012, there wasn't any great explosion. You know where the explosion came? The explosion came in debt service. Over $200 million. But that is where the explosion came. And why you have to do that? Because if you're borrowing, you have to pay. And whenever we came up with a measure, don't care what they were, oh, you're killing people. Sinckler offering people. The Sinckler plan got me can't drink a Sprite. Everything is blame on poor me. Yeah? Because people like a scapegoat. I don't mind being a scapegoat. I could be a scared cat. It don't bother me. But I take responsibility for what I do. No, I take responsibility for what I do. And I do not make excuses for my failures or inadequacies. I accept them all. But if you want to blame me for everything. Blame me for the dump, the $100 million spent on a dump at Greenland, and not a toffee paper ain't gone in there. Blame me for the $35 million spent by the BTA, a loan that we have to pay back, that constrains the BTA's ability to market, because they have to take up money and pay back a loan to sail a boat halfway about the Caribbean, or around the Caribbean half empty for World Cup. Blame me for the $153 million stadium down there when people were advised not to build it. Blame me for the $165 million on the highway, a project built without a proper contract, and when we picked it up, it was nothing more than a marl road. Blame me for the $300 million in GEM. Blame Chris Sinckler for that. Blame me for the judicial center, and I had to come as Minister of Finance and take that out of a bridging loan, pay exorbitant and horrible rates, and clean that up. Blame Chris Sinckler for all of it. If that makes people happy, blame me. I take the responsibility. But I know government don't begin in 1 year and end in the next. It is continuous. And the things we did when money was flowing and honey was all around and did not correct those situations have come back to haunt us now that the sore has been, the plaster has been removed and the sore has been cruelly exposed. But I know I am not going to sit down as Minister of Finance as long as I am in that position, or in this position, and say it and not do something about it. We were talking about the restructuring of the economy for many years. Tell me what was restructured in Barbados. Tell me what was restructured. Absolutely nothing. And one commentator, who of course twists and turns as the wind blows, often made the point, and he was correct when he made it, that, you know, the Barbados economy was looking pretty. Everybody was flowing. It was like a pear tree. The leaves green, 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 and the roots rotten, rotten, rotten. And those roots have now been exposed, and we have to do major surgery. And all we are asking is for little cooperation. I don't mind people criticizing. People will find things to criticize you for. That's part of the core, part of the core. But don't tear down the country and frighten investors and have meetings with people and telling people, oh, wait till we get in government, don't invest in Barbados. And then come to lecture me. I support my country. I support my country. I am not doomed to fail. I am too determined to be defeated. I believe in Barbados, and I believe that we can work together to pull ourselves out of this. It will not be painless. In fact, it may very well be painful for some people. But at the end of the day, we have to ensure that the collective body is moved together. And that is where we are at. There is a point where you have to cut off, where you have to say, listen, this is too much. Don't go that far. Stop a little bit. Criticize, politicize, do what you have to do, but tone it down a little bit. Don't be going all over the place trying to cause disruption in the country, because that serves somebody's purpose. Well, I'm not invested in failure.
Well, we'll take your final three
Sinckler.
questions
Yes.
now. Mr. Bourne first.
Okay, thank you. Minister Sinckler, in your 19-month project, you listed 5 areas,
Yes.
which was agro-processing.
Correct.
Now, Sir Ronald Saunders, a noted CARICOM diplomat, once recently suggested something which I'm now about to ask.
Yes.
Based on the fact that we need foreign exchange and that agro-processing is seen as a path of getting back to how we're accustomed.
Right.
What about the decriminalization and the taxation of cannabis and using it as an export market to California, Canada, Colorado, places where it is used for medical purposes?
You don't throw me a curveball, boy. Marijuana. Huh? You make me sweat, man. Legalization of marijuana. You really feel that if you, you better believe it. But you feel if they legalize marijuana, that it will have that big profit value in it? Huh? It's not going to. If you allow it to grow freely all around the place, and they are so advanced now in the technology, they have tens of different varieties of marijuana. They have some marijuana you can smoke and don't get you high. They have marijuana that they have genetically modified to put in to give a perfume scent. They have so many different varieties now. I am afraid that even if it were to have extinct economic value to it, that we have so missed it, but we are so far behind in that technology that I don't know that we'll be able to catch up now. The Americans are very clever at these things, so they have gone ahead and they have. I saw a documentary on National Geographic. I could not believe it. I know marijuana is, marijuana, we know they got a couple of varieties around, but not that I trade in that type of stuff. But you hear the talk around the place, you read it in the paper. They even got what Beijing green, I think they call it. But but I didn't know that this thing is now grown now in greenhouses, and they have these hundreds of different varieties, and I never knew that until I saw the documentary. It was really an eye-opener. But that's not something that we think. What we have to do, Ian, is that we know what works for us, and we have to improve the quality of the products that we produce and the services we provide. We have to lift the standard. That's what Barbadians have to do. We are a society, as you say, we like a lot of talking. We like to yap. We like to spend a lot of time on social networks, tearing down people and doing rubbish. We need to concentrate on making the country better, being more productive, going to work, staying at work, doing work, facilitating in government, in the private sector, which in some instances ain't much better either. We need to get productivity up. People need to work. This country is not going to sustainably produce if we just talk and look at people and see who's doing well when we are not minding the shop. We need to be better at what we do, the best at what we do. And we say standards are falling in terms of people providing. We pay high salaries, and our salaries need to be better. That's how we will get the salaries up higher, by more productivity, by being profitable, by being efficient. That is what will make Barbadian economy and society stronger. And that is what the government is investing in. It's not an easy task. It is very difficult because it means changing cultural mindsets and so forth and so on towards consumption and production. But it is something that we have to have as a conversation, a national conversation, and then from there work effectively and efficiently to produce. Yes, Mr. Braffett.
First of all, when will that office start registering persons to allow them to benefit from the reduced VAT in respect of the direct tourism services that
they are already benefiting. They are already benefiting. No, before you go there, Mr. Braffett, they are already benefiting from it. That was implemented, the act was passed, and they're benefiting. What will happen is that after the first quarter, when the process of registration comes out, that's when they report. But they have already started and should have already started. Those who haven't are clear and clean to go ahead and reduce the VAT on the products, the services they provide.
And the other question is whether government has the financing in place for the purchase of Ammon and other hotels as you had outlined in the
The purchase of Ammon has been completed.
And what about the solid base tax?
That will be done as soon as Parliament reopens. The bill is finished, I believe. Well, it is at the CPC, the Chief Parliamentary Counsel's office. Our understanding is it's pretty much finished, and it will be laid in Parliament as soon as it reopens. We wanted to do it before the end of the year, but...
How will it be calculated, though? Could you say how it will be calculated?
How is it being done now, Martin? It's on the improve
0.3%,
but on the site value, on the improved
site value.
Yes, the site value of the improved property. Yes, that's how it's been done.
Minister Sinckler, the private sector has said that there are several projects in the pipeline that they think can help Barbados to get out of the slum. But their concern is that there's just way too much bureaucracy and most of the times it's just stuck in the mire. What is being done to get rid of some of that bureaucracy so that the projects can go ahead?
When you hear that from the private sector, ask the person who is saying it, tell you which projects these are. Tell them, give you the details, where exactly it is stuck. Don't just take that as a general comment and say run off with it. Ask them, what projects are you talking about, and what is the issue or where it has stuck? Who is holding it up? And you will see the response. I can say that the Prime Minister and myself are meeting tomorrow with some members of the private sector through the Barbados Chamber of Commerce, and I have told them through the President, Mr. Vaswani, to bring the projects. Let us know what these projects are and where they're being held up, whether it is in the Ministry of Finance, which I don't know about, or in the Town Planning Department, which I equally don't know about. But where these projects are held up, bring them, and we will discuss them tomorrow with the Honourable Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, I might add, and we will see. But I have heard that, and we had a consultation at the Hilton on the economy, and that issue came up. The town planner was there, and the people who were saying all these projects could not say which project is that was held up. That's why I tell you, probe beyond the initial statements. When people make these statements, ask them why, what you're talking about. And the town planner always complains about that and defending town planner's office, because I feel all offices can work speedier. But to be fair in the system, there are people who just make statements, and when you check, there's some other issue associated with why that project cannot go forward. And most of the time, 90% of the time, has nothing to do with bureaucracy in government. It has to do with some fatal flaw in the project itself, and particularly as it relates to providing adequate information on the projects and so forth and so on. So, but you know, we will see how that goes.
Earlier on that the state NIS has been challenged over the years.
Yes.
Is it still equipped to facilitate this large layoff?
Yes, we believe it will be, and we will be speaking finance, that is Ministry of Labour, with the NIS in relation to the impact which any potential layoffs will have on them. Of course, if needs be, government will have to step in and top up the unemployment fund if that is necessary, but we don't anticipate that at this stage.
Minister Sinckler, question is, when will government amend the Tourism Development Act?
Oh, that's coming very shortly. That is going to come in less than 2 weeks. In less than 2 weeks, for sure.
Part of that would be there were questions as to when the health sector will be able to benefit from the same concession.
In less than 2 weeks. The paper is being prepared. Draft paper is being prepared. It should be. I've seen a draft copy of it with Minister of Tourism Richard Seeley, and I know it is in an advanced stage of preparation.
So this would allow hoteliers to get the same concessions as sandals?
To get the same concessions as sandals? No. You see, this whole thing about get the same concessions as sandals. No. The world doesn't work that way. And we met with the BTA executive, and we spoke to them about it. You have to have some. There has to be some methodology governing that, and the cabinet is going to, along with that same TDA, and we agree with the BTA that is what will be done, BHTA, on what will be done, because I met with them for more than 2 hours, the outgoing and the incoming president and the executive chair, the executive director, that will be captured in a policy of the government, and it will be announced along with the adjustments to the TDA, which will cover both of those. But there is not going to be a blanket thing that everybody, so every mom and pop bread and breakfast thing will come and say, I want sandals concessions, and you will get it. That is not going to work. What we will do is assess them, and we will have a general policy, and then we will have a specific policy as it relates to the appropriate concessions which should be granted to the entities which have applied for them.
Based on those discussions you've had with the hoteliers, are they happy that, because remember they were complaining that they were not getting the same concessions and so on as sandals. Based on what you've said,
90% of what sandals got, most of them already get and have access to. But we are going to ensure that nobody is placed at a distinct disadvantage in relation to what sandals would have received, but we also have to do that in consideration, of course, of our own revenue situation and the ability of the country to afford it. What I can say is that we have to begin to reposition our thought processes on tourism. And I agree, the BHT has been saying, other people have said it, tourism is an export agency, is an export sector. It's one of the few export sectors that you actually tax the exports. So in our review of the entire tax system, which we're going to do later this year, we are looking at to see how we reposition the issue of taxation on production and on exports, and to see how that tax burden is carried, whether it's carried up front, in the middle, or at the end. So those are the things that we're going to be looking at comprehensively. But in relation to these specific things, we're going to be looking at those both on an individual level, but a general policy will be announced very shortly by the Minister of Tourism once Cabinet approves. Before you go, this gentleman here.
Yes, I want to know if you have any specific plans at this critical time for Barbadians living abroad. How can they become involved in helping this economy grow?
Well, by investing in it. that is what we want to see. And investments don't mean, people feel that when you say investments, they mean you must go and do a big tourism project or something like that. No, people who have resources, who may be thinking about returning home but be indecisive about their decisions, building a home in Barbados and sending foreign exchange back to do that, that is an investment. And we want to see how we can encourage that type of investment. There are, of course, other processes that you can do. You can, through your insurance company or credit union, prefer for an investment in government paper. You can look at specific projects that may be of interest to you, and we would encourage all Barbadians overseas and Caribbean people who may be interested in Barbados, because there are Caribbean people who are interested in Barbados, to invest in the country, to bring resources in, to help build up, because that's how you grow an economy, through investments.
The other two reporters, sorry, at the back and then steps. Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You go ahead.
I'm just wondering, what are you thinking of all the cost-cutting measures? The government is thinking in terms of cutting, trimming the cabinet in a new sort.
That's a little bit above my pay grade. You would have to speak. You would have to speak to the Prime Minister about that.
So I just want to ask about confidence levels. All figures show that Barbados is in a downward spiral. We suffered downgrade after downgrade, and your strategy.
We are not in any spiral, darling.
The government, it did not reverse the decline. And at the time of the elections, you said that was a scare tactic on the part of whoever. We just speak to the issue of confidence, the public's confidence in the government at this time.
When last I checked, the public's confidence in the government was very high. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Depending on who you speak to, if you listen to Mr. Ellis's program, you will think that nobody has any uses for the government at all, and anybody in it. If you listen to other programs, you will hear something different. If you walk the streets, I go in supermarkets every day, contrary to popular belief. And by the way, nobody felt that my car in town Saturday night. He didn't leave home, because that was the latest rumor. I know you were calling about that. That's why I didn't answer. I walk all around, and Barbadians generally, they understand the situation. People have cable TV. They have family living overseas. They know the impact. But I've cited the figures. I've said to you what our situation is. And if you look at it, between 2010, when I became Minister of Finance, and now, look at the economic decline in Barbados in terms of real GDP. And tell me if the economy has basically been flat. The first year, we had 0.5. The second year, we had flat. This year, we probably are going to have, I believe, about negative 0.4 or 0.5. I don't know. The central bank is doing their thing next week, so we will hear the figures. So when you average that out, it's basically been flat. You would think, when you hear people, that the economy has disappeared. Yes, we've had downgrades, but you know what? In 1991, 93, we weren't members of any ratings agencies, so there wasn't a downgrade then. So you would not have heard of me downgrade. Downgrade is not a phenomenon. The downgraders upgraded the finance companies and the banks, and that caused a downgrade in the global economy. So they have their work to do. That is their impression as they put it in their thing. That is our opinion. We are not trying to paper over it and make it seem as though everything is rosy and good. Everything is not rosy and good. We have deep challenges, but we are facing those challenges in a serious way. We have outlined the program, and we've indicated that this is the program. If we stay the course, colleagues, we will come out of this and prosper the greater for it. In 1991, God bless him, everybody abused Erskine Sandyford. And I live to hear how the same people who were abusing Erskine Sandyford say, man, if Sandyford didn't defend the Barbados dollar and take the measures he had to take, Barbados would have been taken, which is true. So the person or the people who are in the position to take the decisions that are tough never get the praise when they're taking it.
Minister Sinckler, downgrades, layoffs, the situation with respect to our foreign reserves. Others look at these things and say failure. You speak today as though you've done no wrong. Have you assessed your own stewardship of the Ministry of Finance and come to any conclusions as to where you went wrong?
Mr. Ellis, I know you were anxious to ask that question from the time you came.
That's why I was looking at the watch.
Yes, I know. And, you look, I believe throughout the course of this press conference, I have taken responsibility for any and all failures, including the ones that I am responsible for in the Ministry of Finance. Economic policy is not an exact science. You don't work, even though economists give you the impression they can come up with a model, and once they put it through a ringer and they do a full econometrical equations, that is it. Economics is still, and economy is still a behavioral science. And you can craft the best policy in the world and implement it, but if the human condition and behavior and the environment is not conducive to successful implementation of that policy or rebound of that policy in terms of the benefit, then you will have situations where there are shortfalls on what you would have predicted or said to come through. And we all have to accept that. We all have to accept that. At the end of the day, David, I accept the responsibilities. My stewardship, I accept the responsibility. But I'm saying, look at the facts fairly. And you will see that we have not done as badly as people are working it out. I'm not saying that to exonerate myself. But I am equally saying as well that show me the period in Barbados' economic history in which this economy has done well against such a horrible international situation. Show me. Has never happened. Has never happened. Where I take credit, and where this government takes credit, is that we've held the hands of Barbadians and shielded them pretty much from the ravages of the worst recession in the world. It has cost us. Yes, it has cost us. And we have to pull back seriously from some of it. But I am saying it would only be heartless of the government to have gone ahead. You know, there's some people who felt that we should have laid off from the Gardener to the Governor General. Straight up. But that can't be the first response of a government. We said that would be the last response. We have tried different scenarios to keep Barbados steady and afloat. And we point to a lot of countries around, including some in the Caribbean, and say, oh, look, well, this country is getting more tourists than Barbados. But we don't go behind the scenes and look at the fundamentals and see what levels of employment are, what deficits are, what financial challenges they have. We don't look at none of that. But we get to browbeat Barbados as though Barbados is living in a cocoon somewhere and the rest of the world does not affect us. I am saying to you today, as I say to all Barbadians, you check and see from the time of the slavery and the colonial period, check the structure of this economy. It is inextricably linked to the global economy. We are a periphery from the core. And if the core is systemically challenged, the periphery has to be challenged too. And there are no countries around the Caribbean, none of them looking like Barbados, that have been able to do substantially better than Barbados has been able to do in that scenario. Why? Because they are all conditioned the same way. That is why we need to restructure. That is why we need to restructure. Don't tell me about Guyana. Guyana has natural resources that they have exploited in this recession that have gone up. Commodities, metals, precious metals, and so forth and so on. Don't tell me about Suriname, same issue. Don't tell me about Trinidad and Tobago, they have oil. And even in spite of all the oil that they have had, the Trinidad economy has not grown. So when you look at what is happening, is Chris Sinckler to blame for all this? This is my grand failure? Look at Britain. Britain went into recession twice. Only now easing out. The Chancellor of the Exchequer laid off 512,000 British people from the public service. And then came back 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago and said, well, another 147,000. I am going to cut public expenditure by $3 billion every year for the next 3 years. And people are talking as though, there's some super person around here who is going to walk in and think all the people you hear talking David, all the people you hear talking, particularly the ones in the opposition, never run an economy that had these type of challenges. None of them. None of them have run an economy that has had to deal with major recession, international recession. None of them. None of them have had to do it. I had a conversation with Charles Williams today, Sir Charles Williams, and he was making the point to me, I tell you, you should call your program and make it. Don't only call when you plan to lay off people. Call and make the point that 30 projects across the Caribbean, according to the Economist paper, magazine, 30 major foreign direct investment projects from Turks and Caicos to Tobago failed in the Caribbean during the course of this crisis. Totally failed. Only 4 survived. And you look at Barbados and you see what has happened. And we know them, the projects that were pulled back. Beachlands, the project at Paradise, 4 Seasons, the one at Bats Rock, Platinum, where the whole town, the old whole town, the old chefette at whole town, Bacassa, Peter Kane, or whatever they call down St. Lucie, Foul Bay, Harlequin. I didn't cause those problems. We gave them all the concessions in the world. We gave them everything. We did the red carpet. We had cocktail parties. We did everything. The people simply did not have the money to invest. They didn't have it. So therefore, when people are talking about what is happening in the Barbados economy, be fair. Yes, criticize me. I'll take my criticism manfully. But be honest and fair and talk about what is happening in the global economy and the impact which it is happening in Barbados. And say to yourself, what are the things that we have to do to improve that situation? And let us work together to improve it. But if you spend all your time on a program or writing in the paper, barking and hollering and criticizing and pulling down and tearing down, and then calling your friend, hear me on the program last night, yesterday, man, I met Sinckler ring, man. Hear me, going on tomorrow too. This is what has no passing off as serious dialogue and discourse in this country. And I'm saying that we got to wake up and smell the coffee and get with it. Whether it is me here or somebody else, this path has to be walked through and done so quickly and assuredly. And this government is going to do it because that is our responsibility. As we have been elected, I have already said before, and I'm going to say again, those who have post-election stress syndrome, get over it. Get some medication. Move on. The country wants to breathe. Let us exhale. Let me move on and work. There will be another election. You will get your opportunity to say all that you want, when you want it, how you want it, and if you want it. But this is the time to work. This is not the time to play politics with the lives of Barbadians. Okay. This is simply not the time.
The 2 final questions, Mr. Yerwood from The Nation and Mrs. Boone from CBC.
Mr. Sinckler, sticking with the issue of the layoffs, has there been a final determination on how many layoffs will issue across the public sector? Is it 1,500 on each side or is it 2,001?
I think I gave some indicative figures about what we were looking at, but they're still working on the final composition and the numbers, and also across departments. But that will be known that will be known very shortly, of course.
My question, just 2 parts. With the merger of the statutory corporations, do you anticipate any job losses there?
Yes, there will likely be, by process of restructuring, there will likely be some adjustment of staff. Of course, if an institution goes out of business, then of course you will have that. If it is merged, you may not need to have all the people who were performing the job. So there will be some restructuring in terms of that, and there will be potential that there will be some adjustments in staff levels. There actually could be increases in others too, depending on what you are proposing to do and how that merging and restructuring is taking place. So it could balance itself out, but the idea is to get the savings by ensuring that we don't have all of this duplication of effort, urban, rural, national housing, BTI, COMI, NEDMS, all of these institutions, Invest Barbados, BIDC, all of these things, we have to look at a way at doing the service, getting the efficiencies, providing the type of thing that government wants without having this big, extensive network of institutions carrying their own establishments, demanding their own transfers from central government, and of course costing the taxpayers lots of money to do.
Can you comment on what we're hearing, that government is selling the lot to Sol? Can you give us a comment on that?
No, I don't know of any such. I don't know of any such thing.
Okay.
Sorry, there was only one other thing. This issue here of the marina project.
Yes.
I heard you mention some issue with the Chinese. And
Yes, they've expressed an
exactly
interest.
what is going on there with that? Because this project has been talked about
Been around
a
for
long time.
for more than 20 years.
Yes. One thought that the government had actually gone into some memorandum of
Yes, we did with a company called SMI. There have been some challenges. We're working with them to identify the appropriate level of financing. I can't say that they didn't identify financing. They did identify financing, but the terms and conditions were not favorable for us to undertake at that time. So we are working together along with them to see how new, different type of financing can be, more concessionary type financing can be done. A project of that nature requires that type of financing rather than just open market financing. So the Chinese have expressed a very strong interest. Chinese companies have looked at it. The IDB has also said that it is something that they would be interested in if we wanted to put it in our country strategy for 2014 on. And so the decision will now lay with the cabinet to make a final decision for that.
Do you regulate the MOU? Do you have an MOU with the other company?
But as I said, we're working with the company in relation to that.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the media, for attending and participating in this press
Thank you.
conference. Minister Sinckler, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and please have a great afternoon.